So a usual thing that you hear about Holopilot is just some silly music and one-off kills where you happen to get somebody to chase one of these guys. And for the longest time, I'm like, who falls for this? And it turns out people like him. And there's actually people like him that I didn't even think were people like him until it turned into somebody like me. So what do I mean by that? I'm like, well, how does the Holopilot affect me? And I'm like, every so often it catches me, but it's usually at the beginning of the game. And then I'm like, okay, that's a one-off. And that's why usually you'll see montages like this. You'll hear this music right now in the background, which I'm going to leave on because, it kind of goes with it. But don't worry, we're going to cut that out soon. I just want to give you an initial feeling for what it's kind of like to use the Holopilot, because it does always come down to you wanting to be like, I bamboozled this guy and I got this guy to fall for this trick. And it does feel good to set up correctly. Like, who's going to be passing up a pilot on the low ground with a battery? Obviously you're going to go for that. And I understand as well that if somebody just saw you round a corner, they're going to instinctively shoot when they see a pilot. It's like, I get why it works there, but the question is, can it work on more than just a one-off? And at what depth does it actually work, and where doesn't it work? So after you get through the initial learning curve of figuring out how to actually make your Holopilot deploy in the way that you want to, and that means knowing that the way that you face is the way it's going to be shooting out, but it also takes into account how fast you were going, in which direction. You can go the opposite direction in order to make it stand still, but it's still momentum based in regards to how it kind of comes out. If you're on the wall and you happen to not be moving, it will just stick to the wall versus it just going off of the wall or continuing to wall run. There's a lot of ways you can actually shoot it for it to work correctly, but that's something you're just going to have to kind of explore on your own, because on top of making sure that it's going forwards, standing still, or walking or crouching or whatever you want it to do, is also still watching out for some structures, because it will get caught on walls. It will just run into walls, and obviously it's not that useful if it doesn't go where you want it. Now this was really the moment where I figured something out. I'm like, I could use my Holopilot, but I'm like, he already doesn't even know I'm here. And that's the main thing you have to take away from using the Holopilot, is that you only use it when you actually need it. Because the bad thing about the Holopilot is when you deploy it wrong, and that means you deploy it in the exact same direction you're going to be going anyways, all you're doing is telling people that you're there, even if it's beside you or things like that. Like, people are not looking specifically at the dot, they're looking typically in the general direction. And some of the things that you can't capture about Holopilot is that all the times that you deploy it, for one, you can't always see yourself deployed, so when people are watching the gameplay, they don't get that full effect of how the Holopilot worked. But right now it's just telling them that there's somebody generally in front of them, and that's why they're coming out like this. There were a few plays that I didn't even show, because even though I know it was a Holopilot doing the work and throwing them off, you can't show that to a viewer like straightforward. You will not see that that's what happened, because for one, you won't even see the Holopilot placement, and it requires you to also know which way you're running, which may not be as obvious to the viewer while it's happening. So what I wanted to do was cut out a few parts from a couple of games that I had, just to give you kind of the whole effect of how it is to run a full game with Holopilot. And surprisingly, I did a lot better than I thought I would. I actually went on a huge winning streak. I was MVP probably like 80% of the time, and I was just putting down really solid gameplay because I wasn't doing anything fancy, right? I can't go for grapple ejects or anything like that. If we ejected at the same time, I shot you, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty easy. I usually have somewhat my feet on the ground, or if not on a wall, so I feel really good. Like, once you're caught in the arch of the grappling hook, it's actually pretty easy for people to follow that path once you're slingshotting in order to shoot you down, unless you manage to get a really good slingshot where you're moving really fast. Here's one where you're going to see that it makes him turn his head. It's very hard to avoid the Holopilot. And the thing is, it's not an ability that's just targeting one person. It actually has the ability to target multiple people in your vicinity by throwing out their radar. And this is a funny thing about it, is that the Holopilot works on intermediate to advanced players. And I actually find that the better you are at this game, the more the Holopilot messes with you, because you're constantly looking at that radar and you're trying to make plays based off of it. Now, one of the other things about the Holopilot, though, which is a strength and a weakness, is how easy it looks to kill, because it's typically running in a straight line. It looks very vulnerable, and people want to pick off the weak person in a pack, so they'll usually go after somebody that's like walking, because sometimes when you deploy, that's what you do. But depending on how you want it to come out, it can be more of a bait for some people. And this is one of the things that I noticed that I was like, this is pretty annoying. You can bamboozle a Spitfire user twice, and he will still have enough ammo to follow up and still kill you. That's one of the nice things about the Holo pilots. Like, people will shoot it, they'll be like, okay, I got bamboozle, and they'll usually instantly go into a reload. And you're like, great, okay, that's where the opening is. But on weapons like the Spitfire, you just don't see that very often. So it has all these strengths that can only be utilized under certain conditions, and that was really important. That's why I pointed out at the beginning that when I did not use my Holo pilot that time, I swear that was the first time it really clicked that using the Holo pilot is not always a good idea, because sometimes it just generally gives you away. It has to be something that has to be used thoughtfully, and you can still spam it. Like, if there's nothing going on around you, definitely shoot it out, because for one, you got 2 charges and they recharge really fast. And it's just a nice way for you to start already baiting people. But if you're going to be using it in like open areas, usually you want to shoot in like almost the opposite direction that you are, until you get into more confined space where you have a general idea where people are and you're using it in a good fashion instead of just giving yourself away. The whole gist of that whole rant is just don't use it for no reason. You have to use it mindfully. If not, it's useless. And that's what was going on with me when I was using it previously. I wasn't being mindful enough for it until I gave it a real chance. And I'm just like, I'm going to play like a Holo pilot does. And I'm like, how does a Holo pilot player even play? It's like you're looking for opportunities. You're not just hoping for them. They have to already be there. And then you're filling them up with your Holo pilot. You're like, this situation actually calls for a Holo pilot. It's not like I'm going to use a Holo pilot and hope for the best, which is kind of the approach you take with a slingshot. You're just like, I'm going to slingshot in there and hope for the best. People that use their stim when they spawn just to get back into the fight, I think that is one of the biggest wastes of stim, unless you know that you're trying to get into a group of people. And even then, you know, okay, I know you want to go in for the kill, but it makes way more sense to save that for when you actually get into the fight. I'm like, that is the biggest toss away of stim. That to me is just reaching. Like, you're just hoping that something works out for you when you start using your stim. And I think that's a poor way to play. And I think it shows even more when you try to do that with Holo pilot. You just have to be super specific. Never lose sight that you're just a Holo pilot guy. You know what? You're just a regular pilot with a Holo pilot. That's it. Not the other way around. You're not a Holo pilot. You're a pilot first, and then you have Holo at your disposal. And yeah, just overall as a general pilot, it was interesting because the one thing I noticed, so it's like I really liked it against pilots, but I did not care for it against Titans. I just didn't feel like it gave me a big enough advantage. Like, Titans, for a Titan to shoot it, they have tons of ammo, unless they use their laser, but, you know, usually they're not going to expend everything they have just to get rid of one pilot. And even if they get fooled once by it and you happen to shoot them from the side, it's like that's kind of it when it comes to a Titan. Once they have a beat in your location, like, you're tempting death every time you continue to stare at a Titan after shooting them once. So I find that it just gave me no real benefit for Titans, and that's where it was really lacking. Like, yes, I could use it sometimes to kind of get away in the sense that they would turn away, but I didn't find that it was increasing my damage output. And that's sometimes what I can get from other abilities, because I can stay in there a lot longer. I can stay in the pocket into this sweet spot where I can do a ton of damage, and then I can phase out, stim out, or I can grapple out. So that's the main difference when it comes to comparing this to other abilities, which I find does extend your fighting time against Titans. The Holo pilot does not. It's good more so as a getaway tool if you find yourself in a bad position or you want to distract them for a second just to get that shot off. Like, I can see it actually being decent maybe if you want to... No, I was going to say Archer Rocket, but every Titan can dodge it and some Titans can just straight up block it, so yeah, I still don't see the use in it really. I was thinking about going around and going in through the under window, but I didn't have to. I don't know if he thought I went back in my Titan. I don't know. I'm not even sure if he was paying attention to the Holos at all either. Sometimes it's hard to say. I was playing against somebody else with Holo though, and I managed to run right through one of his Holos that he had put in like a tight spot, and I ran right through it and managed to sneak up on him. I was like, yeah, can't fool me. I'm a Holo main now. No joke. I was actually really into Holo pilot this time around. There's something wrong with these walls. Like, look, you can't... This all counts as one geometry, which is kind of weird. And then so is the second lip. Like, if you want to try to jump and then jump up to the lip up top, it doesn't really work either. Yeah, I was kind of trying to figure out. It's like sometimes it felt like it worked better. Like, what am I missing here? Should you not? Yeah. Like, why can't you just stick right away? It counted as one wall. That to me felt like Doom. Yeah, it even looks like a Doom weapon. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys got an idea of what the Holo Pilot is and what it isn't. I think I'm going to have to show you guys some more because even I was surprised by how much I missed Holo Pilot when I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done the video. Let's go back to grapple. And I did. And I enjoyed slingshotting and all that stuff. But at some points, I really missed just doing this Holo Pilot stuff. Because I find that it was working on high tier players and it was keeping me alive in these like very tight situations. Like whenever I'm behind a corner, I can go behind a post. It was like Holo Pilot time. It made a huge difference, and it made a huge difference especially on high tier players. That's the part that keeps getting me, is that it actually works against high tier players. So to wrap it up now, is what I've learned about Holo Pilot is that it's definitely viable. A lot more viable than I gave it credit for at the beginning. But it does struggle still against Titans. I don't feel it gives you as well-rounded a package, but if I were to go into PvP with it, I think I'd enjoy it. But even then, for the moments in attrition, I still enjoy it, because then in the end, all these battles end up as just Titan battles, because that's really where the big war in this game happens. Titans make all the difference in this game. That's why I'm still a big believer. If you want to even compete as a pilot, if you want to have more fun as a pilot, you take a battery, so you get rid of the Titans and you go back into pilot gameplay. And that's where the Holo Pilot shines, so it kind of works out for me. I'm like, Holo Pilot into an Ion, Holo Pilot into your Titan end. You go on. And that's pretty much the end of this video. Again, thank you all for joining me. I'm Paper, cut to you, and I'll see you all next time.